Have you ever looked around a crowded room and just wondered, why exactly do we behave the way we do? Like, why are some people naturally the life of the party, totally energized by all the chaos, while others are wonderfully quiet, just kind of absorbing everything from the edges? Or why are some of us highly organized, mapping out the week with absolute precision, while others are perfectly happy winging it and thriving on the spontaneity of the moment? These aren't just casual observations. These are the fundamental questions of human nature that psychologists have spent literally centuries trying to decode.
Welcome to this explainer on personality theories and assessments. Today, we're diving deep into the actual architecture of human behavior. We're going to unpack the complex psychological techniques and established frameworks that experts rely on to categorize, understand, and even predict human action. It's a genuinely fascinating exploration of the mind, and I am so excited to guide you through all these intricate systems.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our roadmap for today's journey. First up, we'll examine the big 5 traits, commonly known as OCEAN. Second, we're going to look at the mechanics of the Myers-Briggs type indicator. Third, we'll explore the historical context of personality temperament types. Fourth, we'll shift gears to clinical personality tests used by medical professionals. And finally, we'll uncover the mechanics behind projective techniques.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the Big 5 personality traits. The Big 5 model is absolutely foundational in modern psychology. And that's mostly because rather than putting people into rigid little boxes, it looks at broad traits that actively influence our daily behaviors, our emotional responses, and how we manage friction in our relationships. Plus, it's beautifully easy to remember using the acronym OCEAN. Let's break down how these traits interlock. O is for openness, which differentiates someone who loves abstract art and novel ideas from someone who prefers a concrete routine. C is conscientiousness. That's your highly organized planner who loves systems versus someone who's a bit more relaxed and spontaneous. E is extraversion. Think of the person energized by leading a lively discussion, contrasted with the introvert who really needs solitude to recharge. Then there's A for agreeableness, which measures our baseline for cooperation and trust in others. And finally, N is neuroticism, relating to emotional stability and how we process environmental stress. The key takeaway here is that every single one of us operates as a unique, sliding scale mixture of these 5 dimensions.
So let's test our understanding with a quick knowledge check. Which Big 5 trait is intrinsically linked to organization and self-discipline? Is it A, neuroticism, B, agreeableness, C, conscientiousness, or D, openness? Take a quick second to think about the framework. If you chose C, conscientiousness, you absolutely hit the nail on the head. High conscientiousness is the engine driving structured, disciplined behavior.
Moving right along Section 2, the Myers-Briggs type indicator, or the MBTI.
Now, what's really interesting about this next framework is how widely utilized it is, especially in the corporate world for team building and leadership development. The MBTI basically categorizes our personalities into 16 distinct types based on our unique ways of interacting with the world, taking in information, and ultimately making decisions. It visually breaks down opposing cognitive preferences into a sort of matrix of spectrums. For example, are you energized primarily by your inner world, making you an introvert, or the external environment, as an extrovert? When you have to make a tough decision, do you rely on objective, detached logic, thinking, or do you prioritize group harmony and personal values, feeling? And when it comes to your lifestyle, do you prefer firm structure and early decisions, judging, or are you super adaptable, keeping your options open as long as possible, perceiving?
But, abstract letters only mean so much until we ground them with some real-life implications. Let's look at why certain archetypes really thrive in specific environments. Take an ENTJ, combining extroversion, intuition, thinking, and judging. This person is often the natural commander. It's exactly why you frequently see this profile dominating corporate boardrooms, just seamlessly organizing vast teams toward a single goal. On the other end of the spectrum, an INFP might be the deeply reflective individual pouring their complex inner values into creative writing or nonprofit advocacy. And the ESTP? Well, that's your highly adaptable, quick-thinking debater who absolutely thrives in high-stakes, action-oriented fields like sales or emergency response. Understanding these types really helps us see how diverse cognitive styles excel when they're placed in the right tailored environments.
Time for another quick check. Which MBTI type preference focuses fundamentally on logic and objective decision-making? Is it A, feeling, B, thinking, C, intuition, or D, perceiving? Well, the correct answer is B, thinking. Logic-driven, analytical decision-making is pretty much the hallmark of the thinking preference.
Let's move to Section 3 and see how this all builds. Personality, temperament, types.
We're going to take a little step back in time now. Long before the era of empirical data and modern psychometrics, early theorists actually sought to understand human differences by grouping people into 4 major personality profiles, originally rooted in ancient ideas about bodily humors. What's incredible is how these centuries-old temperaments still resonate so clearly for us today. First up, we have the sanguine temperament. These folks are highly energetic, social, and communicative. They just naturally draw people in. Next is phlegmatic. They're calm, peaceful, and consistent, often acting as the steady peacemaker and the diplomatic glue in any high-stress group. Then there's choleric. Fiercely ambitious, goal-oriented, and decisive. This is your classic driven leader who just pushes right through obstacles. And finally, melancholic. Deeply analytical, cautious, and detail-oriented. They're the profound thinkers who often anticipate risks that the rest of us entirely miss. It's a fascinating historical pivot that really laid the groundwork for modern trait theory.
So, based on that, which historical temperament aligns closest with modern leadership and goal orientation? Is it A, phlegmatic, B, choleric, C, sanguine, or D, melancholic? And the correct answer is B, choleric. The intense ambition and drive of the choleric temperament make it a really natural fit for leadership dynamics.
Now, let's shift our focus to Section 4, Clinical Personality Tests.
Up to this point, we've discussed everyday, observable traits that we use largely for self-discovery or corporate efficiency. But when we shift our focus to clinical methodologies, psychologists rely on entirely different, highly rigorous instruments. These are designed to understand much deeper mental health patterns. So the crucial point here is understanding the gravity and purpose of clinical tools versus general assessments. The Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, or the MMPI, is essentially the gold standard here. While the MBTI sorts people into comfortable, relatable categories, the MMPI is a highly specialized diagnostic instrument. It's made up of hundreds of true and false questions cross-referenced through complex validity scales, and it's utilized primarily by psychiatrists and clinical psychologists to identify, evaluate, and treat severe psychological disorders.
Let's make sure that distinction is crystal clear. Which personality test is mainly used specifically to identify psychological disorders? A, MBTI, B, NEOPRI, C, MMPI, or D, TAT. The clinical diagnostic tool we just examined is, for sure, C, the MMPI.
All right, moving to Section 5, Projective Techniques.
We've arrived at our final and honestly perhaps most intriguing category of psychological assessment. Projective techniques are fundamentally different from everything else we've covered because they are cleverly designed to completely bypass the conscious filtering mind. Think about it. When you take a self-report survey, your ego is often right there, editing your answers to make you look a little bit better. Projective tests remove that ability by presenting you with profound ambiguity. The famous Rorschach Inkblot test, for instance, asks individuals to interpret basically meaningless ink images. Because the image itself has no real structure, the only way your brain can make sense of it is to literally project your own hidden unconscious emotional state right onto it. Similarly, the Thematic Apperception test, or TAT, shows subjects illustrated open-ended scenes and asks them to construct a narrative. And through the simple act of storytelling, deeply rooted desires, hidden motivations, and internal conflicts beautifully reveal themselves to the clinician.
Here is our final knowledge check for the analytical portion of this explainer. Which projective test asks individuals to essentially project their internal state by creating stories from pictures? Is it A, MMPI, B, MBTI, C, TAT, or D, NEOPR? Emphasizing that storytelling aspect, the answer is absolutely C, the TAT, or Thematic Apperception test.
From ancient temperaments tracing back centuries, to the corporate structuring of the MBTI, right through to the deeply clinical rigors of the MMPI and the unconscious unearthing of the TAT, this entire journey brilliantly illustrates a relentless human drive to decode the mind. Understanding personality isn't just some academic exercise. It genuinely influences the fundamental ways we process reality. It dictates how friction occurs in our workplaces, how we synthesize information when we're learning, and the very mechanics of how we connect with others in our relationships. By utilizing these structured theories, professionals across healthcare and education are profoundly better equipped to support complex human well-being.
I want to conclude this explainer by turning the analytical lens right back onto you. Considering the diverse frameworks we've explored today, from the broad dimensions of ocean to the nuanced cognitive preferences of the MBTI, which personality trait or type best describes you? And more importantly, why? How has this invisible architecture shaped the choices you've made in your own life? Take this profound knowledge and use it to better understand not just your own operating system, but the complex, fascinating people navigating the world alongside you. Thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive into human behavior. Keep questioning and stay curious.